It all began with the promise of a dream vacation, a blissful escape from the daily grind, an opportunity to relax and rejuvenate as a family. Our destination was Bali, an island paradise known for its stunning beaches, lush landscapes, and vibrant culture. Little did we know that our dream would quickly transform into a nightmare that would haunt us long after we returned home. My family consisted of my husband, our baby daughter, and our beloved dog, Max. We had meticulously planned this trip for months, saving every penny and counting down the days until we could finally board the plane. Our journey began on a sunny morning at the airport, filled with excitement and anticipation. As we settled into our seats on the airplane, I couldn't help but marvel at the grandeur of modern air travel. The hum of the engines and the muted conversations of fellow passengers created a soothing ambience. Little did I know that this serene moment would soon be shattered. Shortly after takeoff, a bizarre figure caught our attention. He was a man of indeterminate age, with long, unkempt hair and ragged clothes that seemed out of place among the well-dressed travelers. He shuffled down the aisle, his eyes darting around as if searching for something. He approached us with an eerie grin, revealing yellowed teeth that sent shivers down my spine. His voice was a guttural murmur, a language I couldn't comprehend. He extended a trembling hand toward us, revealing a cup for spare change. Startled, my husband and I exchanged uneasy glances. We had heard of scammers who pretended to be in need, preying on the sympathy of others. We chose to ignore him, hoping he would move on. But he didn't. His gibberish words grew louder, his tone more menacing. He cursed us in a language foreign to our ears, spittle flying from his mouth and landing on our clothes. Disgusted and alarmed, I pulled my daughter closer, and Max let out a low growl. Other passengers began to notice the commotion, and a flight attendant hurried over to assess the situation. The man's behavior had escalated to the point where he posed a threat to the safety of the flight. The flight attendants called for assistance from security, and within moments, they descended upon the man, restraining him forcefully. Panic filled the cabin as the altercation unfolded. Passengers whispered and exchanged nervous glances, and I held my baby tightly, my heart racing. The man, now subdued and handcuffed, was dragged to the rear of the plane. The crew reassured us that everything was under control, but the sense of unease lingered. Hours later, we finally arrived in Bali, albeit shaken by the disturbing encounter on the plane. The airport greeted us with the warmth and charm that had drawn us to this beautiful destination in the first place. We collected our luggage and headed to our hotel, determined to put the unsettling incident behind us. Our hotel, nestled in a serene corner of Bali, was a picturesque haven. It was everything we had hoped for: tranquil gardens, a sparkling pool, and an inviting beach just a stone's throw away. We thought we had left the horrors of the airplane behind us, but little did we know that the curse that man had cast upon us was far from over. The first night at the hotel was peaceful. The gentle rustling of palm leaves in the breeze and the distant sound of ocean waves lulled us to sleep. However, as the clock struck midnight, an eerie sensation washed over me. I woke to find my baby standing at the edge of her crib, her eyes wide open and vacant. I rushed to her side, but she didn't respond to my soothing words. Instead, she reached out her tiny hand and pointed towards a shadowy corner of the room. My heart pounded as I strained my eyes to see what had caught her attention. There, in the darkness, a spectral figure seemed to materialize, its presence chilling the room. Max, our loyal dog, was now whimpering at the foot of the crib, his hackles raised. I picked up my daughter and backed away from the apparition, my breath quickening. The ghostly figure began to glide towards us, its form shifting and contorting, as if it were trying to communicate something beyond the grave. Terrified and unable to bear the eerie encounter any longer, I clutched my daughter and fled the room. We sought refuge in the lobby, where the night staff kindly accommodated us in another room. The rest of the night passed without incident, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent had followed us from that plane. Over the next few days, our once idyllic vacation turned into a series of horrifying events. Our baby's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She would laugh one moment and scream in terror the next, as if tormented by unseen forces. Max, our usually placid dog, cowered and whimpered, refusing to enter certain rooms of the hotel. One evening, as I was preparing dinner in the hotel's kitchenette, I felt a sudden, sharp pain in my hand. I dropped the knife I had been using, and it clattered to the floor. Blood oozed from a deep gash in my palm, but there was no logical explanation for how I had injured myself. It was as if an unseen hand had guided the blade. Frightened and desperate for answers, we sought help from the locals. A kind-hearted Balinese woman, hearing our plight, recommended that we visit a local priest known for his expertise in the supernatural. She believed that our family had fallen victim to a curse that had latched onto us since that fateful encounter on the airplane. The priest's temple was hidden away in a lush, remote part of the island. We were met with the scent of incense and the sound of chanting as we approached. The priest, a dignified man with deep wrinkles etched into his face, welcomed us with a gentle smile. Through a translator, the priest explained that the man on the plane had been a practitioner of dark magic, a sorcerer who had cast a curse upon us. The curse, he said, had latched onto our clothes, our belongings, and even our very souls. It sought to torment us, to bring misery and suffering to our lives. With a solemn air, the priest guided us through a purification ritual. He chanted incantations and sprinkled holy water on our clothes, on us, and even on our dog, Max. The air grew thick with an otherworldly presence as the priest battled the malevolent force that clung to us. Finally, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the priest proclaimed that the curse had been weakened but not entirely vanquished. He urged us to take drastic measures, to burn every piece of clothing we had brought with us, to leave behind all our belongings, and to return to our home as soon as possible. Desperate for relief from the horrors that had plagued us, we heeded his advice without question. We watched, tears in our eyes, as our cherished possessions turned to ash in the flickering flames. It was as if a weight had been lifted from our shoulders, and a glimmer of hope returned to our hearts. We boarded the next available flight, leaving Bali behind. The journey back was uneventful, and we couldn't have been more relieved. As we stepped onto familiar ground, we felt a sense of safety we hadn't known in days. But the trauma of our vacation horror lingered. We couldn't forget the bizarre encounter on the airplane, the haunting presence in our hotel room, the torment our baby had endured, and the inexplicable knife incident. We had escaped Bali, but the curse had left its mark on us, forever haunting our memories. Months passed, and life seemed to return to normal. We began to rebuild our lives, thankful for the peace and safety of our home. However, the events in Bali had left scars that wouldn't easily fade. Our baby, now a toddler, would sometimes babble incoherently, as if echoing the gibberish curses that had been cast upon us. One chilling night, as we lay in bed, we heard a sound that sent icy tendrils of fear down our spines, the unmistakable sound of a knife being drawn from its sheath. We jumped out of bed, our hearts pounding, and rushed to the kitchen. There, we found our baby standing on a chair, holding a knife with an eerie smile on her face. We disarmed her and checked her for injuries. She was unharmed, but the terror of that moment would forever haunt us. It was as if the curse had never truly left, and now it sought to harm us in the most unthinkable ways. Terrified and at our wits' end, we consulted with priests, shamans, and paranormal experts, all in search of a solution to our never-ending nightmare. They all confirmed what the Balinese priest had told us: a dark curse had latched onto our family, and it seemed determined to torment us. Desperate for a way out, we returned to the priest in Bali, the one who had initially tried to rid us of the curse. He performed another ceremony, even more elaborate and potent than the first. He chanted incantations, burned offerings, and invoked the protection of benevolent spirits. As the ritual reached its climax, a powerful energy filled the temple, and we felt the oppressive presence of the curse gradually weaken and dissipate. The priest assured us that this time, the curse had been broken, and we were finally free. Returning home once more, we felt a profound sense of relief and gratitude. The nightmare that had haunted us for so long was finally over. Our baby began to recover from the trauma, and Max, our faithful dog, regained his playful spirit. But the scars remained. We would forever carry the memories of our vacation horror, the strange encounter on the airplane, the eerie presence in our hotel room, and the sinister curse that had nearly torn our family apart. To this day, we shudder at the thought of that bizarre man and the gibberish curses he had cast upon us. We can only wonder what drove him to target us, to unleash such malevolence upon our lives. And as we watch our baby grow, a lingering fear always remains: what if the curse, once broken, could return to haunt us once more? I never believed in the supernatural or anything remotely paranormal. My world was a realm of logic and reason, a place where ghosts, spirits, and eerie apparitions existed solely in the realms of fiction and folklore. But when I embarked on a journey to a distant land, seeking solace and escape from the relentless grip of grief, my skepticism would crumble into dust, and the terrifying unknown would forever alter my life. It had been 6 agonizing months since the tragic car accident that claimed my beloved husband's life. Mark, my soulmate, my confidant, my reason for living, had been ripped away from me in an instant. The pain of his loss was an ever-present specter, a gaping wound that refused to heal. Yet, life pressed on, uncaring and relentless, and I found myself compelled to pick up the fractured pieces of my existence. As autumn cast its chilly embrace upon the world, I made a decision to travel to a distant country. A land of unfamiliar landscapes and foreign tongues, a place where I could escape the suffocating weight of memories that clung to my every thought. It was a decision born out of desperation, a desperate attempt to outrun the ghosts of the past that haunted my every waking moment. The preparations for the journey were a laborious ordeal, booking plane tickets, saving every penny, scouring the internet for the perfect hotel that would offer me a semblance of tranquility. Finally, the day of departure arrived, and with a heavy heart, I boarded the plane that would carry me to my destination. Upon arrival, I was greeted by the intoxicating scent of the unfamiliar, a blend of exotic spices, foreign flora, and the promise of escape. The hotel I had painstakingly chosen was nestled amidst the heart of the city, a haven of luxury that promised solitude and peace. The initial days were spent exploring the vibrant streets, sampling unfamiliar cuisines, and allowing the novelty of my surroundings to distract me from my sorrow. The foreignness of it all offered a temporary respite, a fleeting illusion that I had left my heartache behind. But the universe has a cruel sense of humor, and it was about to remind me that no distance could truly separate me from the torment of my past. It happened one evening, as I sat alone in the dimly lit embrace of my hotel room. The soft glow of the bedside lamp cast eerie shadows upon the walls, and the rhythmic hum of the city outside seemed to lull me into a trance. That's when it occurred, the intrusive ring of my phone, an unexpected intrusion into my solitude. I glanced at the caller ID, and my heart skipped a beat. It was Mark's number. A chill ran down my spine as I stared at the screen. It couldn't be. It was impossible. My mind raced with rational explanations, pranks, technical glitches, anything but the impossible. Yet, despite the logical arguments that waged within my mind, a tremor of hope surged through me. Could it be that the impossible had become possible? That I could hear Mark's voice once more? With trembling hands, I answered the call, my voice quivering as I uttered a tentative, "Hello?" And then, a familiar voice, the voice of my beloved Mark, reached my ears. "Hey, sweetheart, it's me," he said, his tone laced with warmth and tenderness. "I miss you so much." My heart soared, tears welled in my eyes, and a rush of emotions overwhelmed me. "Mark, is that really you?" I whispered, my voice choked with tears. It was him, the voice, the cadence, the unmistakable presence of the man I had loved so deeply. The voice on the other end spoke of shared memories, of dreams and plans, of our future together. It was as if Mark had never left, as if he had returned from the abyss to comfort me once more. We talked for hours, reminiscing about our life together, my grief momentarily eclipsed by the sheer miracle of this connection. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of happiness, a fragile hope that the boundaries of life and death were not as impenetrable as they seemed. But as the days turned into weeks, the calls became increasingly peculiar, their content taking on an eerie and unsettling tone. Mark began to ask unusual questions, delving into details of our past that only he could have known. He spoke of moments that had been cherished secrets between us, of personal experiences that no one else had witnessed. It was as though he was peering into the depths of my soul, unearthing memories that I had shared with no one but him. Even more unsettling were his claims that he could see me, that he watched over me, even in my most private moments. It sent shivers down my spine, the warmth and tenderness of his voice now replaced with an eerie sense of intrusion. Doubt began to gnaw at me like a relentless parasite. The Mark I knew would never invade my privacy or speak in such a disquieting manner. My initial excitement morphed into fear and suspicion. Who could be behind these calls? Was it some sick prankster who had managed to learn everything about us? One fateful night, unable to contain my growing unease, I confronted the caller. "Mark, this isn't you," I said, my voice quivering with a mix of fear and desperation. "Who are you?" There was a chilling pause, an eerie silence, and then Mark's voice, cold and emotionless, replied, "I'm always with you, my dear. You can't escape me." Terror seized me, my heart pounding in my chest as I realized that something was horribly wrong. I hung up the phone, my hands trembling uncontrollably. In a frantic panic, I called the phone company, demanding that they trace the calls, but their response was baffling. They could find no record of any incoming calls from Mark's number. That night, I locked every door and window, feeling a suffocating sense of dread pressing down on me. As I lay in bed, my phone began to ring again, the caller ID displaying Mark's number once more. I hesitated, my heart pounding in my ears. Eventually, I answered, my voice quivering with fear. "What do you want from me?" The voice on the other end whispered, "I want you to remember, my dear. I'll always be watching." I hung up, tears streaming down my face. For the first time since Mark's death, I felt truly alone, abandoned in a world where the boundaries of reality had been shattered. Whoever or whatever was calling me was not my husband. It was something sinister, something beyond my understanding. The calls continued relentlessly, their frequency increasing, driving me to the brink of madness. I changed my phone number, relocated to a different city within the foreign land, and tried to escape, but it was all in vain. No matter where I went, the voice followed me, a spectral presence that refused to release its grip. Haunted and desperate, I began to research the circumstances surrounding Mark's fatal accident. I was convinced that it held some clue to the sinister mystery that now enveloped my life. What I uncovered was deeply unsettling: a dark, winding road, no witnesses, and unanswered questions about the cause of the crash. It was as if someone had deliberately tampered with his car. To this day, I still receive those eerie calls, and I can't escape the haunting feeling that the true nature of my husband's death holds the key to the relentless torment that haunts my life. The phantom caller, claiming to be Mark, is a constant reminder that sometimes, the boundary between the living and the dead is not as clear-cut as we believe. Haunted by this relentless torment, I finally made a decision. I could no longer endure the unrelenting agony of these calls, the ever-present fear that something beyond the grave was watching my every move. I had to return to my home country, to the familiar surroundings of my past, to the people who had once been my support. With a heavy heart, I packed my bags, checked out of the foreign hotel, and boarded a plane that would take me back to the place where my life had once made sense. It was a journey of despair, a retreat into the arms of familiarity, a desperate attempt to forget the horror that had consumed me. As the plane ascended into the sky, I looked out the window, my gaze fixed on the distant horizon. The sun was setting, casting an eerie glow upon the world below, and for the first time in a long while, I wondered if I would ever find peace again, if the phantom caller would continue to haunt my every step, or if I would finally break free from the sinister grip of the unknown. It was the kind of journey you take when you'd rather be anywhere else. A trip to see my ailing grandmother, frail and bedridden, was the last thing I wanted to do. But the family ties that bind are hard to break, even when you've got a world of your own problems. The rain was relentless as I navigated the winding back roads, far from the comforts of civilization. My GPS seemed to have given up on me, the screen a dim glow in the gloomy interior of my car. The wind howled outside, rattling the branches of gnarled trees that lined the desolate highway. It was as if the world itself had decided to conspire against my visit to Grandma's old, decrepit farmhouse. I couldn't help but reminisce about happier times. When I was a child, spending summers at that creaking old house had felt like an adventure. But now, as an adult with a demanding job and a life of my own, it was nothing more than a haunting relic of my past. Finally, the GPS spat out its verdict: arriving at your destination. I squinted through the rain-smeared windshield, and there it was, looming in the distance like a ghostly mirage, the farmhouse. It had seen better days, that was for sure. The paint was peeling, the windows were cracked, and the front porch sagged under the weight of time. As I stepped out of the car, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The oppressive silence of the countryside was broken only by the sound of raindrops drumming on the roof. I shrugged off my unease. It was probably just the isolation getting to me. I made my way up the creaky wooden steps to the front door and knocked. It took a while for Grandma to answer, but when she did, her smile was warm, if a bit frail. "Darling, it's so good to see you," she crooned, her voice trembling with age. I embraced her gently, feeling her frailty in my arms. "You too, Grandma. How have you been?" She ushered me inside, her hand trembling as she motioned for me to sit. "Oh, you know, the usual aches and pains that come with old age," she said with a feeble chuckle. "But I'm just grateful you're here." As I settled into the faded armchair by the window, I couldn't help but notice how the room seemed frozen in time. The same dusty old furniture, the same faded floral wallpaper, and the same musty smell that had clung to the place for decades. We spent the afternoon reminiscing about my childhood, about the summers I'd spent exploring the woods and helping Grandma tend to her garden. She seemed lost in those memories, her eyes distant, as if trying to relive those moments. But as the evening descended and darkness crept in through the curtains, Grandma's demeanor changed. Her voice grew hushed, and her eyes darted nervously around the room. "There's something I need to tell you, dear," she whispered, her voice trembling. I leaned in closer, concerned. "What is it, Grandma? You can tell me anything." She hesitated for a moment, as if debating whether to share her secret. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "I've been keeping a terrible secret, one that's haunted me for years." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What kind of secret, Grandma?" She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she began to speak. "Your grandfather. He's not who you think he is." I furrowed my brow, confused. "But Grandpa passed away years ago." Her eyes met mine, and there was a desperation in them that sent shivers through me. "Yes, he did, but he kept coming back." I blinked, unable to comprehend what she was saying. Coming back? What do you mean? She leaned in closer, her voice a mere whisper now. Every time he died, he'd come back, but not the same. Each time, he was different, deteriorating in both appearance and coherence. I sat there, stunned into silence. The rain outside seemed to intensify, adding to the eerie atmosphere of the room. Grandma continued, her eyes darting toward the dark corners of the room as if expecting something to materialize. I had to protect our family, protect you. So, I killed him. Over and over again. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. My mind raced, struggling to process what I had just heard. You killed Grandpa? She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. I had no choice. He'd come back, but he wasn't the man I married. He was something else, something wrong. I glanced around the room, my unease deepening. Where is he now? Grandma's gaze shifted to the window, and she whispered, he's out there, watching us. He's always watching. I followed her gaze, but there was nothing outside except the unrelenting rain. Grandma, this can't be real. But the fear in her eyes was all too real. You have to believe me, dear. He's out there, waiting. As the night wore on, I couldn't shake the sense of dread that had settled over the house. Grandma's confession had sent my mind spiraling, and I couldn't decide if she was suffering from some sort of delusion or if there was truly something sinister at play. The hours dragged on, the darkness outside punctuated only by the occasional flash of lightning. Grandma had retreated to her room, and I could hear her murmuring to herself, her voice a quivering whisper. I couldn't sleep, not with the weight of her words pressing down on me. I decided to investigate, to see if there was any truth to her claims. Quietly, I slipped out of my room and made my way down the dimly lit hallway toward the front door. The rain outside had turned into a torrential downpour, and the wind howled through the trees like a mournful ghost. I pushed open the creaking door and stepped onto the front porch, my heart pounding in my chest. The darkness was suffocating, broken only by the flickering lights of distant lightning. I scanned the yard, my eyes straining to see through the sheets of rain. There was nothing out there, nothing but the ominous shadows of the trees. And then, I saw him. A figure stood at the edge of the yard, obscured by the rain and darkness. He was watching the house, watching me. I couldn't make out his features, but I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. I called out, my voice trembling. Who are you? There was no response, only the relentless rain and the distant rumble of thunder. I took a step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. Grandma was right, wasn't she? You're not Grandpa. The figure remained silent, but I could feel its malevolence, a palpable force that seemed to seep into my very bones. And then, in the brief illumination of another lightning strike, I saw it, a twisted, contorted face, a mockery of the man my grandfather had once been. Without hesitation, I turned and fled back into the house, slamming the door shut behind me. I locked it, my hands trembling as I backed away. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the impossible. I heard a soft, ominous whisper from outside, a voice that seemed to come from all directions. I've come back, my dear. Panic surged through me as I realized that whatever stood on the porch was no longer content with watching. It wanted to come inside. I rushed to Grandma's room, desperate to wake her and get her to safety. But when I opened the door, I was met with an empty bed, the sheets tossed aside as if she had been violently taken. Terror gripped me as I realized that whatever had been watching us had taken Grandma. I had to find her, had to confront the horror that had invaded our lives. I made my way back to the front door, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. As I opened the door, I could hear Grandma's voice, faint and distant, calling out to me from the darkness beyond. I stepped out into the rain, into the heart of the storm, and followed her voice. It led me deeper into the woods, where the trees loomed like twisted sentinels. The rain soaked through my clothes, chilling me to the bone, but I pressed on. And then, I saw it, the figure, the grotesque parody of my grandfather, standing before a gaping black chasm in the earth. It was as if the very ground had opened up to swallow him whole. Grandma was there too, her eyes filled with terror as she stared into the abyss. Run, dear. Run. But it was too late. The figure turned toward me, its contorted face twisted in a malevolent grin. You can't escape, my dear. I've come back for you. I tried to flee, but the ground beneath me trembled, and I was drawn inexorably toward the chasm. The figure reached out, its cold, bony fingers closing around my arm, pulling me closer. As I teetered on the edge of the abyss, I looked down into the darkness below. And what I saw chilled me to the core, a writhing, seething mass of grotesque, contorted figures, all twisted reflections of my grandfather. In that moment, I understood the horrifying truth. Grandma had been right. My grandfather had come back, not as a single entity, but as a legion of malevolent, grotesque doppelgangers. I screamed as I was pulled into the abyss, into the nightmarish realm that awaited below. And as I descended into the darkness, I couldn't help but wonder if I, too, would become just another twisted version of the man I once was. For in that desolate, rain-soaked wilderness, I had discovered the true horror of my family's legacy, a legacy of death, resurrection, and an eternity of suffering. I've always cherished the quiet of the countryside. The soothing hum of crickets, the rustling leaves, and the vast expanse of nature surrounding my secluded house. It was my sanctuary, a place where I could escape the cacophony of the world. But one fateful night, the tranquility I had grown to love became a sinister shroud that cloaked me in terror. It was a crisp autumn evening when it all began. I had been eagerly anticipating my boyfriend's arrival. His job kept him busy, and our reunions were moments of solace in an otherwise hectic life. The routine was simple. I would sit in the cozy kitchen, illuminated by the soft glow of the porch light, and wait for his arrival. The kitchen table had become my throne, where I would patiently scroll through my phone, knowing that soon I would hear the familiar rumble of his car in the driveway. The anticipation always brought a smile to my face. Earlier that evening, he had called to let me know he was on his way. His voice, filled with warmth and reassurance, had left me with a sense of longing. I had expected him to arrive in due time, and so, I resumed my phone scrolling, the minutes ticking away as I counted down to his arrival. Then, it happened. The voice. I heard it as clear as day, unmistakably his, coming from just outside the kitchen window. My heart fluttered with excitement as I thought he had arrived early. But as I peered out, the reality of the situation began to unravel. Outside, beneath the pale light of the porch, there was no sign of him. Only the looming darkness of the countryside greeted me. A chill danced down my spine as I realized the eerie nature of the situation. I felt a knot form in my stomach, but I decided to call him, brushing off the unease as my imagination running wild. My trembling fingers tapped out his number on my phone, but with each attempt, the call rang only twice before falling silent. His phone, a simple prepaid device he kept for work, sometimes acted up, but this was unusual, even for it. I tried repeatedly, the same two rings echoing in my ears like an ominous refrain. While I struggled with the phone, the voice outside began to change. What had once been a gentle summons, filled with familiarity and warmth, now took on an unsettling edge. It grew impatient, demanding that I come outside. My boyfriend had always called me by endearing nicknames, never by my full name, but now it yelled my name with a rage that sent shivers down my spine. The voice was no longer his, it was something else, something malevolent, wearing his voice like a mask. Fear clung to me like a second skin, and I knew I couldn't stay inside any longer. I needed to see what was happening outside. My footsteps were hesitant, my legs trembling as I crossed the threshold from the kitchen to the back porch. The night air was thick with uncertainty, and the porch light cast long, distorted shadows. My breath came in shallow gasps as I stared out into the abyss. There was nothing. No one. Just the oppressive darkness that enveloped me. With a shaky hand, I sent a text to my boyfriend, pleading for him to answer his phone. My phone screen illuminated my trembling fingers as I typed, but as I did, the voice outside grew angrier, more sinister. It cursed at me, hurling obscenities and threats that sent a surge of terror through my veins. It was as though whatever stood beyond the porch, masquerading as my boyfriend, was growing impatient with my hesitation. It started to pound on the door, each thud resonating like a malevolent heartbeat. The force of the blows sent shockwaves through the house, and I knew I couldn't endure this nightmare alone. Desperation welled up inside me, and I called my boyfriend again. This time, I could hear the urgency in his voice as he answered, apologizing for the inconvenience. His phone had been on vibrate, and he had been unaware of my frantic attempts to reach him. "Why are you telling me to come outside?" I stammered, my voice trembling. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. He sounded genuinely concerned but also confused. "What do you mean? I'm just now on your road. I haven't even reached your driveway yet." The color drained from my face as I realized the horrifying truth. The voice outside, the angry presence demanding my presence, was not my boyfriend. My boyfriend was still on his way, miles from my secluded home. A cold dread settled over me as I clung to the phone. I could feel the tension in his voice as he urged me to stay inside and lock all the doors and windows. He sped up, the sound of gravel crunching beneath his tires signaling his approach. The voice outside became unhinged, its cries and curses growing louder as if it sensed that my salvation was near. With trembling hands, I mustered the courage to move the curtain aside and peer outside. What I saw, or rather, what I didn't see, made my heart plummet. There was nothing there. No intruder, no menacing presence, just the night, silent and empty. The porch light cast eerie, elongated shadows that played tricks on my mind. I turned my gaze toward the driveway, and there, racing toward the house, was my boyfriend's car. He screeched to a halt, and before I could react, he was sprinting up the stairs and bursting through the door. The moment he entered, the voice outside ceased, as though it had never existed. My boyfriend searched the yard, his face etched with concern, but there was nothing to be found. Only the haunting memory of the voice remained. We spent a sleepless night, clinging to each other, haunted by the events of that evening. The sunlight that filtered through the curtains did little to dispel the darkness that had settled over us. The questions were endless. Who or what had tried to lure me outside? What malevolent force had pretended to be my boyfriend? In the days that followed, we considered leaving my secluded home. The countryside, once a source of solace, now seemed like a place of unspeakable horrors. We were left with a chilling uncertainty, the fear that something had taken an interest in us, something that could not be explained by logic or reason. As we packed our belongings and prepared to leave, the landscape outside seemed to shift. Shadows danced at the edge of our vision, and the whispering wind carried voices we couldn't comprehend. It was as if the very land itself was alive with malevolence, and we were but visitors in its twisted domain. We drove away from the house, leaving behind the memories and the unanswered questions. But as we left, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that whatever had tried to lure me outside still lingered in the darkness, waiting for its next opportunity to strike. Our journey continued, but the horrors of that night would forever haunt our dreams, a reminder that sometimes, the line between reality and nightmare is thin, and the darkness that lurks in the quietest corners of our world can be the most terrifying of all. I've always believed that the most horrifying stories are the ones grounded in reality, the ones that could happen to anyone. This tale I'm about to recount is a chilling reminder that sometimes, the most ordinary vacations can lead to unimaginable horrors. It all began on a crisp autumn morning when my 4 friends and I, Dave, Sarah, Mark, and Emily, decided to embark on a journey to a secluded island called Darkhaven. Darkhaven had always been shrouded in mystery, nestled in the middle of a serene lake, accessible only by an old, rickety ferry. It was rumored to be the perfect destination for those seeking solitude and a break from the cacophony of modern life. The ferry ride was uneventful, with the lake's calm waters reflecting the golden hues of the surrounding trees. Our excitement was palpable as we approached the island, our minds filled with visions of cozy cabins, bonfires, and starry nights. Upon arrival, Darkhaven seemed like a postcard-perfect paradise. The island was adorned with dense forests, pristine lake shores, and a sense of tranquility that soothed our weary souls. We had rented a charming cabin by the lake, complete with a roaring fireplace and creaky wooden floors, a place where we could escape the world for a while. The first few days were idyllic. We spent our time hiking through the woods, fishing in the lake, and sharing stories around the campfire. It was the type of vacation that rekindles friendships and leaves you feeling invincible. But the tranquility was deceptive, a thin veneer that masked the island's secrets. On the 4th night of our stay, we gathered around the campfire, our faces illuminated by the dancing flames. The night was unusually quiet, the air heavy with an unspoken unease. Sarah, always the curious one, had been doing some research about the island. She discovered that Darkhaven had a dark past, a history marred by mysterious disappearances and tales of supernatural occurrences. It was said that an ancient curse hung over the island, a curse that drove some to madness and others to vanish without a trace. Sarah's revelation cast a shadow over our cheerful gathering. Mark, ever the skeptic, scoffed at the idea of curses and ghost stories. But Emily and Dave, their eyes reflecting the flickering firelight, couldn't help but feel a twinge of anxiety. That night, we retired to our cabin, the weight of Sarah's discovery lingering in the air like a ghostly presence. Sleep did not come easy. The wind whispered through the trees, and the floorboards groaned beneath our restless feet. It felt as though the very essence of the island was trying to communicate with us. In the depths of the night, I awoke to the sound of faint, mournful cries echoing through the forest. At first, I dismissed it as a trick of the wind, but as the wails grew louder, my unease intensified. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I woke my friends, and we ventured into the darkness to investigate. The source of the cries led us deeper into the woods, where an old, dilapidated cabin stood, shrouded in mist. The cries emanated from within, haunting and sorrowful. With trembling hands, we pushed open the creaky door, revealing a scene that would forever be etched into our nightmares. Inside the cabin, We discovered a room filled with tattered old journals, their pages yellowed with age. They told of a man, a former resident of Darkhaven, who had become obsessed with the island's dark history. He had sought to unlock the secrets of the curse, to harness its power for himself. The final entry, written in trembling script, spoke of a ritual gone terribly wrong, a ritual that had unleashed a malevolent force upon the island. The man's writings descended into madness, his words a desperate plea for help. As we read the journals, a chilling presence filled the room. Shadows seemed to move of their own accord, and the air grew frigid. We realized that we were not alone in the cabin. A spectral figure materialized before us, its eyes filled with torment and rage. With a gut-wrenching shriek, the apparition lunged at us, sending us scrambling for the door. We ran through the forest in a blind panic, the wails of the ghost echoing in our ears. We knew then that Darkhaven was not the peaceful paradise it had seemed, but a place tainted by a curse that hungered for our souls. Days turned into nights as we desperately tried to escape the island, but each attempt was thwarted by an unseen force. It was as though Darkhaven itself was determined to keep us prisoner, to make us pay for disturbing its ancient slumber. Our supplies dwindled, and our spirits waned as we realized the futility of our situation. Emily, always the optimist, had been the first to succumb to despair. She became convinced that the ghost we had encountered had marked us, that our fates were sealed. As the days passed, Emily's mental state deteriorated further, her eyes vacant and hollow. She would sit for hours, muttering to herself in a language none of us could understand. We watched in horror as she carved cryptic symbols into the cabin's wooden walls, her fingers stained with blood. One evening, as darkness fell upon Darkhaven, Emily's behavior took a violent turn. She attacked Mark with a frenzied ferocity, her eyes filled with an unholy rage. Dave and I struggled to restrain her, but her strength was otherworldly. In the midst of the struggle, a sinister, malevolent presence filled the cabin. The room grew icy cold, and the ghostly figure from the journals materialized once more, its eyes fixed on Emily. With a bone-chilling shriek, it engulfed her in an otherworldly maelstrom, and she disappeared before our very eyes, leaving behind only a faint, lingering whisper. We were left in stunned silence, our minds unable to comprehend the horror we had just witnessed. Emily was gone, taken by the curse that had plagued Darkhaven for centuries. Mark, his body battered and bruised, had narrowly escaped the same fate. As the days turned to weeks, Mark and I became prisoners of the island, our bodies weakened by hunger and exhaustion. We no longer tried to escape, for it seemed futile. We had become pawns in a game we could not understand, at the mercy of forces beyond our comprehension. But in the darkest of moments, a glimmer of hope emerged. Mark, driven by a fierce determination to survive, revealed a hidden strength within himself. He had always been the rational one, the voice of reason among us, but now he had become something more, a warrior, a protector. With makeshift weapons and a newfound resolve, Mark and I ventured into the heart of Darkhaven, determined to confront the curse head-on. We encountered malevolent spirits, grotesque apparitions, and horrors that defied description. But we pressed forward, fueled by a burning desire to free ourselves from the island's grasp. The climax of our battle against the curse took us to the very heart of Darkhaven, to the ruins of an ancient temple. There, we faced the malevolent force that had tormented us for so long, a malevolent force that had been awakened by the ill-fated ritual of the man from the journals. The battle that ensued was a nightmarish frenzy of blood and terror. Mark and I fought with every ounce of strength we possessed, our determination unwavering. It was a battle of wills, a battle for our very souls. In the end, it was Mark's courage and sacrifice that vanquished the curse. With a final, desperate act, he hurled himself into the cursed waters of the lake, taking the malevolent force with him. The waters churned and roiled, and a deafening scream filled the air. I watched in horror as the lake swallowed Mark, the waters closing over him, and the curse that had haunted Darkhaven for centuries was finally laid to rest. I was the sole survivor of our ill-fated trip to Darkhaven, the only one to escape the island's clutches. The curse had exacted a terrible toll, claiming the lives and sanity of my friends, and leaving me scarred in ways that cannot be seen. As I sit here, writing down this account of our nightmarish ordeal, I can only hope that our story serves as a warning to those who seek adventure in the unknown. Darkhaven is a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurs, where the past and present are intertwined in a web of horror and despair. And as I reflect on the events that transpired on that cursed island, I can't help but wonder, did we stumble upon Darkhaven by accident, or were we drawn there by forces beyond our control, by a curse that hungered for our souls? The answer, I fear, may forever remain a mystery, lost in the darkness of the island's secrets. It had been a typical day at the office, filled with mundane stories about local events and community gatherings. But as a journalist, I always yearned for something more, something that would set my heart racing and send shivers down my spine. Little did I know that my thirst for a gripping story would lead me to a nightmarish tale that would haunt my dreams for years to come. It started with a call from my editor, a gruff man with a penchant for uncovering the macabre. "We've got a lead, something big," he said, his voice a raspy whisper over the phone. "A school field trip bus has gone missing in a foreign country, and they've found it in the most horrifying condition. Pack your bags, you're heading there to investigate." My heart quickened with excitement and trepidation. This was the kind of story I had been waiting for, a chance to prove myself as a journalist. I grabbed my camera, my notepad, and a few changes of clothes, not knowing that I was about to delve into a chilling mystery that would change my life forever. The flight to the foreign country was long and uneventful. I tried to pass the time by reading, but my thoughts kept drifting back to the ominous task ahead. What could have happened to that school bus? The details my editor had shared were sparse but disturbing. Claw marks, shattered windows, and bloodstains that told a tale of unspeakable horror. As the plane touched down on foreign soil, I felt a growing unease in the pit of my stomach. The air was thick with humidity, and the landscape seemed foreign and foreboding. I hailed a taxi to take me to the location where the bus had been found. Arriving at the scene sent a chill down my spine. The school bus stood there, a sinister relic of terror. Claw marks marred its exterior, as if some monstrous beast had tried to tear its way inside. The windows were shattered, shards of glass glinting ominously in the dim light. And the bloodstains, dark and foreboding, were splattered across the front of the bus, like a grotesque work of art. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. The local authorities were already on the scene, talking in hushed tones and casting wary glances at the bus. Officer, redacted, a stern-looking man with a weathered face, noticed my arrival and approached me. "Are you the journalist?" he asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. I nodded, introducing myself as I showed him my press credentials. "I'm here to investigate what happened to this bus and its passengers. Can you tell me anything about it?" Officer, redacted, sighed heavily, his eyes haunted. "This is like nothing we've ever seen. We found the bus abandoned here, and the state it's in. Well, you can see for yourself. But there's something you should know. Everything found inside is to be kept confidential." I furrowed my brow, taken aback by the secrecy. "Confidential? But I'm a journalist, my job is to uncover the truth." He regarded me with a grim expression. "The truth might be more than you can handle. Just be careful. This place has a way of getting under your skin." As I stepped inside the bus, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. It was as if the very air inside held the echoes of terror that had unfolded here. In the dimly lit interior, I saw Officer, redacted, speaking to a young boy, no older than 12 or 13. The boy's eyes were wide with fear, and he clutched a tattered teddy bear as if it were his lifeline. "So, you're telling me you don't have any idea what happened to your classmates?" Officer, redacted, asked, his voice gentle but probing. The boy's voice trembled as he replied, "And no, sir. The only thing I kept hearing were the screams. The screams, oh man, I knew whose screams they belonged to, except that thing." "Thing?" Officer, redacted, questioned, his brows furrowing. "Are you sure it wasn't just your bus driver causing all this since he's also missing?" The boy shook his head vigorously. "No, it got him too. I know because his scream was the worst." I couldn't help but shudder at the boy's words. It was clear that something unimaginable had happened here. I began taking pictures of the gruesome scene, capturing the claw marks and bloodstains as evidence of the horrors that had unfolded. As I moved further into the bus, my heart sank. Wedged between the edges of the seats, I discovered a folded piece of notebook paper, stained with blood. I carefully unfolded it, my hands trembling with anticipation. I don't know what's going on," the note read. "It took Mr. Charles first. We were all driving to the field trip to the zoo when suddenly a loud scream from Mr. Charles's seat up front made us all jump and yell. Then we saw a big splotch of blood all over the front windows. Then the bus skidded on the road till it crashed into a tree. Some of the kids are hurt. Mrs. Laramie and Mr. Hopkins are helping us as best as they could." The note sent a chill down my spine. It confirmed the boy's story and painted a horrifying picture of the chaos that had ensued. I discreetly pocketed the note, determined to uncover the truth behind this nightmarish ordeal. As I continued my exploration of the bus, I found more notes, each one penned by a different hand. The horrifying accounts detailed the relentless terror that had unfolded on that fateful day. "We're all scared, okay? That thing got Sarah and Tommy. They were both crying and sitting by the windows when suddenly long, elongated white hands came out from the window and grabbed their heads, and I can't describe it. It was all too sick. The words on these notes were chilling, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were dealing with something beyond human comprehension. As I took more pictures, I was approached by Officer, redacted. "We're going to take this kid outside," he said, nodding toward the traumatized boy. "If you see anything unusual, make sure to yell for us." I nodded in agreement, trying to maintain my composure. As the boy was led outside, the sound of an approaching ambulance pierced the eerie silence. It all felt like a bad dream, and I couldn't shake the sense of impending dread. It didn't take long for me to find another note, this one stained with blood and concealed in the same fashion as the others. "Mrs. Laramie is now in shock," the note read. "That's what Mr. Hopkins called her. She's just sitting in a ball and rocking back and forth. I'm scared of that thing, and I just want to go home." The notes were becoming increasingly distressing, and the situation inside the bus was growing more unsettling by the minute. I couldn't help but wonder what kind of entity could instill such fear and chaos. The next note I found was penned in the same handwriting as the first one, suggesting it was written by the same student. "I'm trying to comfort my friend, Jake. He's all messed up. He keeps saying that if we all look at the windows, we'll be saved. Mr. Hopkins is gone now. He tried to go out the bus doors and get some help. As soon as he got to the doors, the arms came back again. We all looked away as we heard his screams. Once they were over, we looked back and screamed in shock and fear. Mr. Hopkins lay on the floor, looking like a broken pencil." My stomach churned as I read the gruesome account. It was clear that whatever had attacked the bus was relentless and deadly. As I reached the front of the bus, where Mr. Charles had been sitting, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of dread. There, I found a final note, written by a student named John. "If anyone sees this note, just tell my parents that I love them. There are only 5 of us left. Marcus can't see, so we hope for the best. We're going to look in the windows, 2 of us on each side, holding hands. Maybe if we all do this, Marcus will live. See you on the other side, John." Tears welled up in my eyes as I read John's heartbreaking message. It was clear that the survivors were clinging to a desperate hope of escape, but their chances seemed increasingly slim. As I exited the bus, I was met with a scene of chaos. The traumatized boy was being rushed into an ambulance, his eyes vacant and distant. Officer, redacted, approached me, his face pale. "One of the EMTs went to check on the kid," he said, his voice trembling. As he reached inside, long, elongated hands with claws came out from the right back window and just squished his head. My blood ran cold at the horrific description. It was as if the malevolent entity that had attacked the bus still lingered, waiting for an opportunity to strike again. I couldn't fathom what we were dealing with, but it was clear that it was far from ordinary. Unable to bear the horrors any longer, I hastily made my way back to my car. The questions swirled in my mind, and the need to uncover the truth grew stronger with each passing moment. What kind of monstrous entity could inflict such terror? And what was its motive? As I drove away from the scene, the words of Officer, redacted, echoed in my mind. "This place has a way of getting under your skin." I couldn't help but wonder if I was diving headfirst into a nightmare from which there might be no escape. Little did I know that the mysteries surrounding the missing school bus and the malevolent entity that had attacked it would lead me down a dark and treacherous path, one filled with unspeakable horrors and a sinister presence that defied explanation. "4 months had passed since my friend's disappearance in Indonesia, and the agonizing mystery of his vanishing hung over us like an unrelenting storm. John, adventurous and fearless, had embarked on a spring break trip to explore the enigmatic Death Island. Its name alone was enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. His plan was to investigate a long-abandoned tuberculosis hospital, notorious for its dark history and haunting legends. The hospital, a relic from 1898, had housed over 2,000 patients during the 30s and 40s, many of whom succumbed to the deadly disease. To make matters worse, the hospital's head doctor was known for conducting gruesome experiments on the patients, leading to their untimely deaths. A horrifying riot at the hospital had ended with the doctor's murder by one of his own victims, and now, his malevolent spirit was rumored to roam the island. Dismayed by John's sudden disappearance, I couldn't let him vanish without a trace. I gathered a group of friends who shared our concern and decided to travel to Indonesia in search of answers. Our journey took us to the eerie Death Island, where we booked a room in a hotel. We arrived weary but determined, aware of the grim stories that clung to the island's history like a shroud. After a restless night's sleep, we made a fateful decision. As darkness descended upon the forsaken hospital, we resolved to explore its haunted halls, searching for any clue that might lead us to John. The island's thick jungle seemed to close in on us as we approached the hospital. Its exterior was cloaked in shadows, and the air was stifling with an unnatural chill. I felt an ominous presence watching us, although I couldn't see anything beyond the thick veil of darkness. We pushed through the oppressive atmosphere and entered the hospital, our flashlights illuminating our path. To our surprise, the hospital appeared eerily clean, free of the expected decay and rot. As we ventured deeper into the heart of the building, stories of the past echoed in our minds. John's great-uncle had been the head doctor's victim, a dark secret he had shared with us before his journey into the unknown. The riot that had claimed 10 lives, including the doctor's, was etched in our thoughts, a grisly tale of torment and violence. We listened with rapt attention, the hospital's history slowly unfurling before us. Hours passed as we explored the abandoned corridors, and our unease grew. The feeling of being watched had intensified, and I couldn't shake the sensation that we were not alone. But our determination propelled us forward, our flashlight beams cutting through the darkness as we retraced John's steps. The hospital held its secrets close, its silence broken only by our hushed conversations. As the clock approached midnight, a sense of dread descended upon us. We decided it was time to return to the hotel, regroup, and prepare for the next day's investigation. Exhausted and on edge, we settled down for a restless night's sleep. At precisely 3 a.m., I was awakened by a haunting sound. A distant, melodic chant filled the air, a foreign language I couldn't understand. Panic surged through me as I grasped my flashlight, scanning the room for the source of the eerie chant. To my horror, a shadowy figure stood a few feet away, its presence unnerving and unnatural. I tried to rouse my friends, but it was too late. One by one, my companions were yanked from their slumber by an invisible force, dragged into the darkness of the hospital. Their terrified screams echoed in the night as I desperately fought to save them, but I was powerless against the malevolent entity that had ensnared them. As I made a frantic attempt to escape, I stumbled and fell, my vision blurred. Struggling to regain my footing, I caught a fleeting glimpse of the mysterious caretaker's face. He picked me up with uncanny strength and carried me out of the hospital, sparing me from the same fate as my friends. I awoke aboard John's boat, the very vessel that had brought us to this cursed island. My mind was foggy, and my memories of the night's horrors haunted me like a recurring nightmare. The chilling screams of my friends reverberated in my ears. The caretaker, his eyes harboring secrets I could barely comprehend, untied the boat and cast it adrift at sea. For how long I drifted, I couldn't say, but it felt like mere days rather than the agonizing months that had passed. My return to civilization led to a thorough investigation of the island, but there was no trace of my friends. It was as if they had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only questions and despair. The caretaker, too, had vanished, his presence as enigmatic as the island itself. Now, I find myself consumed by the relentless desire to uncover the truth, to find my friends and put an end to the malevolent force that lurks on Death Island. The horrors of that night have never left me, and I am determined to face them once more, no matter the cost. As I prepare to return to the island, I am haunted by the chilling belief that my friends are still trapped there, their voices lost in the echoes of a sinister past. I left behind the harsh life of a Russian truck driver when I immigrated to the United States a decade ago. Yet, there's one story from my past that still chills my bones, a tale of horror and despair that unfolded on the infamous M56, a road carved from the suffering and death of countless Gulag prisoners. These roads, built under Stalin's cruel regime, became repositories of agony, with the bones of those who perished during their construction mixed into their very foundation. To call the M56 a mere road would be an injustice. It was a torturous path etched through the heart of Siberia. My cargo during those treacherous journeys was beer, countless tons of it, snugly confined in glass bottles. But the M56 was unlike any highway you've ever encountered. It was a brutal landscape of jagged rocks that devoured my tires. Each month, I prayed that my tires wouldn't give in under the weight of the beer, but I still went through 15 to 25 of them, leaving a morbid trail of discarded rubber by the roadside. One fateful day, just before embarking on another perilous journey along the M56, I had a chilling encounter with a man named Yakov. He spoke of the M56's gruesome history and offered to accompany me to Magadan, the road's ultimate destination, as my guardian. At first, I dismissed his ominous warning as superstitious nonsense. Yet, something about his piercing dark eyes and unsettling demeanor sent shivers cascading down my spine. Despite my skepticism, I agreed to his offer, setting in motion a journey that would test the very core of my beliefs. Yakov, in turn, recounted his own harrowing tale, a nightmarish encounter with spectral remnants of Gulag prisoners who toiled on the M56. These spectral figures, gaunt and wounded, were inexplicably bound to the road, continuing their ceaseless labor even beyond the grave. The narrative he wove sent an icy shiver coursing through my veins, prompting me to reciprocate with my own spine-chilling story. One frigid winter night, I stumbled upon an abandoned car along the M56. Its windows lay shattered, and crimson stains adorned the driver's seat. There was no sign of the driver, but an eerie voice echoed from the surrounding woods, its sibilant whispers compelling me to venture deeper into the forest. An unshakable sense of dread clawed at my chest. As I desperately sought an escape, I encountered a grotesque, emaciated entity. Its ebony eyes bore into my soul, its form devoid of humanity yet grotesquely imitating human speech. The chilling pleas for help that emanated from its contorted lips reverberated around me, etching an indelible mark of terror on my psyche. As Yakov and I pressed onward into the desolation of the M56, our shared experiences and his eerie presence forged an inexplicable connection between us. We confronted not only the physical perils of the road but also the enigmatic horrors that lurked within the Siberian wilderness. The ceaseless vibrations of the truck, the blinding whiteout storms, and the boundless expanse of the road of bones tested our resilience. Together, we navigated the perilous path, haunted by the agonizing memories of those who had perished during the road's construction. The M56 was more than a physical journey, it was a descent into the unknown, where the line between the living and the dead blurred, and the secrets of the past whispered their chilling truths. As we ventured deeper, the shadows of the M56 stretched before us, concealing untold horrors and unanswered riddles. Yakov's presence offered me a faint glimmer of hope in a world where the boundary between reality and the supernatural had become indistinct. Our bond, fortified through shared experiences on this eerie road, emerged as a lifeline in the face of the unfathomable. In the end, the M56 persisted as a place where the realms of the living and the dead converged, where the echoes of suffering and torment endured. Yakov and I confronted not only the harsh Siberian landscape but also the malevolent specters that haunted the road of bones, a testament to the enduring power of the past to shape the present, and a stark reminder that some nightmares never truly fade.